Broadcasting from Silicon Valley, California, this is Conversations with Jennylyn.
You are watching Conversations with Jennylyn, and today my guest is another fascinating human who's making a big difference in the world. She is a radio host of a radio show, Dare to Be Authentic, as well as a relationship coach. And I'm sure she does a lot more than what I've just mentioned. And that's why she's here today to share all of the wonderful things she's been doing with us. Marie Mitchell, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule, and welcome to Conversations with Jennylyn.
Thank you, Jennylyn. It's an honor to be on your show. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Of course, my show is basically a platform for wonderful, successful people and all people to hopefully encourage others with their stories. And so today, let's focus on yours.
Okay.
So you have a radio show as well as you are a relationship coach. Why don't we start with the one you feel most comfortable? Because I'd like to hear about them both in 30 minutes.
Okay. Well, we're going to start with the radio show, even if it was the last thing I did. I became a coach first, but the radio show evolved in a very interesting way. It's called Dare to Be Authentic, as you said. And I initially started with a little station out of LA called The Amazing Women of Power. Their owner, Raven Blair Davis, invited me to have a show about relationships.
Yes.
And it happened in a really magical way, and that's why I went forward with it. I was talking to a girlfriend who used to be a marketing guru in New York City back in the 80s. And we were talking about how to be more seen as a coach. And she said, well, maybe you should call some AM stations locally. They're looking sometimes to fill time and they might interview you, etc. The very next day, Raven calls me. And she says, I'm calling you to offer you your own show on my station. And I couldn't even believe it. After getting up off the floor, I listened to what she had to say. There was a little radio course show to take, which wasn't very expensive. And I always hated my voice. I thought, how am I going to do radio? But I did it, and I decided to call it Dare to Be Authentic because that had been my path in my life. And so that'll segue me over to my life coaching and relationship coaching. So I had come to a point in my life where I didn't know who I was. I was in a 17-year marriage, 3 kids, and I had no self-care in place. I was stuck in the role or consumed by the role of mother, daughter, because I helped my parents, wife, Sunday school teacher, PTA member. I ran around all day, cookie baker, you name it, I did it. And I said yes to everybody, right? And so I was burnt out. I was frustrated. And even though, of course, I take the raising of my children very seriously, that was my number one priority, I didn't feel like I was making a difference or fulfilled. And so I had to get back to me, to myself, to who I was. So I remembered that I read somewhere that I should think about how I felt as a teenager. What did I like to do? What did I aspire to? So I began doing that. And I remembered that I loved reading, and I had stopped reading for pleasure. I used to spend all summers reading novels. So I started reading again, and I always wanted to write. So I joined a writer's group and started writing. That was wonderful. And I'm a published author now. So that's how that Dare to Be Authentic title came about.
You know, as you were speaking, I was thinking, being authentic should be a natural thing for us to do. And yet you have to put the word dare in front of it, which for me implies that people aren't often authentic. And so you're daring them to be authentic.
That's correct.
Isn't that a trip?
It is a trip. I agree with you. It is. It shouldn't be that way. When we're born, and if you watch a little child, they're fully and completely authentic.
Mm-hmm.
As we grow up, between our parents, our teachers, our mentors, ministers, whoever it is, coaches, school teachers, they begin to kind of take our authenticity away from us.
Yes.
And that's for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah.
You think that's where it starts? That's
where it starts from the time you're born. You're being programmed to be whoever the person that's training you wants you to be.
Sorry.
No, and so that's why it's so daring, because you're so used to being this person who's not even you, but you're kind of in that role, almost like an actor, and you're so used to it that being yourself doesn't feel good and it feels scary. And that's where the dare comes in.
So what do you want to say to a person who wants to be themselves, but is trying to please everybody? And so they have a persona, and it's so far from who they really are. And people generally who are not being authentic are not very happy, because inside there's a conflict with the persona and the person you know yourself to be.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I was very unhappy myself because, and you don't even know why. That's a, you don't even know you're not being authentic. It takes a little digging. So for a person who is unhappy, let's say, because they don't even know they're not being authentic, but one of the ways you know is you're always going along with what everybody else wants to do, whether it's a restaurant, a movie, you want to go out, he wants to stay in, you want to stay in, he wants to go out. There's always giving up your power to someone else. So that's one of the signs of you're not being authentic. You're trying to get along with everybody, be little nice guy. I used to call myself a nice little Catholic girl because I didn't want to ruffle any feathers. I wanted everybody to like me. And so I would do what other people expected me to do just to be liked. So, but it leads to a very unhappy, unfulfilled life. So if you're unhappy like that, ask yourself, what do I like to do? What would I love to do? Where would I like to go? Who would I like to talk to? What activities make me feel wonderful? I feel great when I'm doing them.
So as a relationship coach, I think for all of us, it doesn't matter who we are, we will never find a carbon copy of ourselves. And oftentimes we marry people who are the complete opposite. And we're told the balance is necessary because if you're too much alike, then it's just boring. How do you address that? Because how do you encourage people to still be themselves? And if that's the person you've chosen to go the journey with in a marriage, how do you advise people to make it work and not be inauthentic?
Right. So, they say opposites attract, you hear that all the time. And that's not really, they may attract, but it doesn't mean it'll make a good partnership, whether it's a marriage or any kind of long-term relationship. It has to be a relationship where you can be who you are without any pressure from the other person to change or to be someone else. Exactly. Whether you're a man or you're a woman, you have to be comfortable with that person. And sometimes it takes a lot of kind of trials along the way to see who you feel comfortable with. But the number one thing is you have to be who you really are from the start. Because if you start a relationship acting like you're someone else, taking another persona, that's who that person is attracted to. So then when you relax and be yourself, their person's like, well, I don't really like you anymore because this is not how you always were, right? But this is who you really are. You see, so the first step, I think, is practice being who you really are. And that goes in dating as well. I know it's hard because we're always trying to put the best foot forward and you want to be liked by this person and you want him to be attracted to you or her attracted to you. But if you're not who you really are from the get-go, you're attracting a person that doesn't work for you.
And you're also attracting a person who in the end might end up resenting you, like you said. So over the years of being a relationship coach, have you seen a lot of successful marriages come out of inauthentic relationships? Or were you privy to more successful relationships because the people were being authentic?
I've actually coached couples who, as they began to step into the authenticity, were able to mend their relationships. Oh. It's very hard to have a relationship if you're being inauthentic, unless you're having a relationship that's very superficial, because that's what has to happen. In order for it all to come together, you can't go deep with that person. You know what I'm saying? It's all very superficial, and it just becomes how people see you, how people perceive a couple. Oh, they're the perfect couple because they're playing that role of perfect couple. You understand? Yes. But if you want to really connect with the person spiritually, mentally, physically, and feel good about it, there has to be that authenticity there on both partners.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know quite a few relationships where all those elements you listed are missing. But these people
Absolutely.
continue to stay together because it looks good from the outside.
That's right. Or for whatever reasons, because it's scary to go into a dating pool when you're 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, however old you may be, because they're used to that person, even though they're unhappy, they don't know what the next person will be like because they have kids and they don't want to disappoint the children because their parents would be horrified if they separated, you know? So there's all sorts of reasons why people stay together.
Well, do you think that's a good thing for children, though? What do you have to say? How do you speak to the situation where the children are aware that the relationship is not healthy between the parents? What
It's
do
not
you
good
normally
because,
say to parents in that situation?
right, it's not good for the children because children learn what they see. And
Mm-hmm.
you're modeling a relationship that is a disaster. And so what it causes in them is fear of not having a good relationship. Because I've seen that as they become teenagers and young adults and are dating, they're afraid to commit because they don't want to duplicate what their parents did.
Or they think what their parents are doing is normal.
Or they think that it's normal. That's true. That's true. All marriages are like that. Exactly.
So tell us a little bit about your radio show.
Okay, so Dare to Be Authentic Radio, I initially started for two missions. Number one, to encourage and inspire people. And number two, to be more seen for what I am, a life and relationship coach. And I started out teaching about relationships and authenticity. That was my first 8 shows, which was great. And then the 9th week, I had a guest, and it changed my show forever because the energy that was there, the interchange we had was wonderful. So I decided to go guests only. And that first year was the most amazing networking experience I'd ever had. It continues to be so. I meet so many people from all over the world now that have gone through trials, that have been through hardship, but that have come on the other side and they have wisdom to share with other people. So I still have two missions. The first one is the same, to encourage and inspire people. And I do that by picking my guests very carefully. But the second one is I ended up creating a platform for others to be seen and heard. And it's separate from my coaching business, but together in a way. And I also have a desire to connect people. Like if I see someone who's been on my show who goes really well with another person, I'll connect them. And sometimes there's collaboration and all things that happen. So my biggest purpose is to get out a good message to the world, especially in these times. So I'm always looking for guests. If anybody's interested, just go to lifecoachmari.com, lifecoachmari.com, and you can email me or you can call me. My phone number's there. And I do a pre-interview to see if you're a good fit for my show. But I love nothing more than giving out a positive, good message to the world. That's what Dare to Be Authentic Radio is about.
Wow, very impressive. Well, we have a similar mission because that's also my goal.
Mm-hmm.
To inspire and encourage people, and also to share other people's successes so that they could hopefully encourage another person. I believe a big part of why people don't try things is because they're fearful.
Mm-hmm.
So if they've heard from others who've tried and been successful, I think then they would be encouraged to take the risk.
I agree, Jennylyn. Absolutely.
So that's part of why I do the show. So now I'm your second best connection, right?
Maybe my first. Why put yourself a second? Like, go for number one.
Yes. How has COVID-19 affected your business, if at all?
It actually has made my business thrive.
Are you kidding?
Absolutely. And one of the reasons is people can't do in person. They can't do seminars. They can't do conferences in person. They could do everything online. And so people are looking for a new way to be seen virtually. And my show is perfect because, like yours is, you don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to be in any kind of danger from the virus, and you're ready to go. So it actually, more people than ever want to be on my show. And I'm not thrilled about the virus, but I'm thrilled about that. I think the way that we're doing work and doing things in this country is shifting because of the COVID-19. I think we're going to have, not that there's anything wrong with getting together with people, but I think we're all expanding into new things. My entire business, including my coaching business, has been virtual for probably 3 years.
Oh,
I don't see clients. I see them one-on-one, but through this media, through FaceTime, through Facebook, whatever, however they want to connect virtually. Yeah, I don't see people face to face anymore. I haven't for a long time. It makes it easy for them. They don't have to drive anywhere. They don't have to get a sitter, And so I think that this is the beginning of us being able to connect more fully and to embrace the fact that you and I are connecting right now, and I feel like you're in the same room with me.
right. And I always feel that way about everyone I've interviewed. And like you, I've gone around the world and interviewed people. And I just marvel at the fact that we had this pandemic when we had the access we do to the World Wide Web. I've always tried to imagine what it would have been like for all of us if this weren't an option. I mean, what would we have done with ourselves? How would we stay in touch?
Exactly. Yes.
So thank God for the internet, because it does bring us together. Doesn't matter how far away we are.
That's absolutely true. I mean, I have many guests now from all over the world, from Singapore, from Australia, on the other side of the world. And it's like being in the same, I mean, it's not video, but it's like being in the same room with them. And that's the feel that, that my listeners get, just like yours.
I think the world is a lot smaller now too because of it. In the past, the world felt so massive because you had to wait on the mailman or the phone. But now, all you do is dial a link and there you are.
There you are, I know.
Whichever country, I am really grateful that I've lived during this time, even though there is so much doom and gloom. I'm just focusing on the achievements that are coming out of this sad time of this pandemic. As a relationship coach, because of all the stuff going on in the world, COVID, racism, have you counseled a lot of biracial couples?
I have counseled biracial couples, and it's interesting. They have a lot of pressure, not so much in their own relationship as people looking at them and judging them. So a lot of the problems that they seem to have come from their in-laws or other relatives, because some of them don't accept it. Even in these days, some of them don't accept it. But I notice that the ones that they have families that are supportive and all in with them, they do much better.
So, my goodness, that's, it's really sad to think that in today's world, that is still a problem.
Absolutely. And, and parents are foolish. When your child decides to marry someone, short of the person beating them, there are situations where you don't want them with a certain person,
yes,
or they're an alcoholic or drug addict and there's going to be problems. The best thing a parent can do is support that marriage. Because the minute that you put your disapproval on it, even if you don't say a word, you have that in the room. You know what I'm saying? They can sense that. And then the children, your grandchildren can sense that. But if you can, even if you didn't like the guy or didn't like the girl or whatever, if you can just accept, this is what my child has chosen, this is what their happiness, they see their happiness as, and fully embrace it, I think that would make for so much better for relationships.
So as a good counselor, you have to be open to various religions, ethnicities, cultures. Have you ever found yourself feeling like, I don't want to deal with these people because of one of the above? And if you did, why?
Okay, I never felt I don't want to deal with them, but what I sometimes felt is when you mix Western with Middle Eastern, sometimes there's severe differences in the customs. And so sometimes I wonder, why does my client continue to want to be in this relationship? Because they're so different in just the way in what they believe, And so I've never not wanted to help someone. I always continue to help them. And I had one client who ended up having to divorce her husband because sometimes the clash in the cultures is just too much, for them to be able to reconcile.
And so do you actually say, I think, based on what I know and I've heard from both of you, that this relationship should probably be dissolved? Have you ever had
Never.
to say, oh, you never say that?
I never tell anyone to break up with their boyfriend or girlfriend, to leave their husband. Never. I know it. I know it pretty soon into the sessions that this is not going to work for them, but I never tell them. And this is why. This is something they have to discover for themselves, and they have to know for themselves, and they have to be ready to do. I had a client that it took her almost 2 years. She had a live-in boyfriend that was awful. And it took her 2 years to, first of all, gather enough self-esteem and courage to, and by the time she got there, she just was fed up with it, and she had just asked him to leave. They have to have that growth process. You can't tell anybody, even if the person is being beat, which I don't have clients like that, but even if the person is in domestic violence, they're not going to listen to you. Most of them are not ready, or they don't have the resources or the way to get out of that situation.
So when they come to you, how can you help them if you see that they should make certain decisions which you aren't at liberty to tell them? But how can you help them in a situation like that? Just by listening?
By listening and by bolstering what they need. So that with that client with the 2-year live-in boyfriend, I just helped her raise her self-esteem, believe that she's worthy, not want to be treated badly. You know, because when our self-esteem is low, we allow people to treat us badly, whether it's our boyfriend or our father or a friend, right? But as our self-esteem grows, we're not willing to take that anymore. And so what I do is I build up their self-esteem. I show them how much they're worthy. They get to feel their worthiness. And once they get to a certain point, they're not willing to put up with that anymore.
So have you ever counseled both sides, both people in the relationship? Because as a person who has gone to counselors in the past, I feel that if I come to you and I tell you my story, but it involves another person, that could be my version. Mm-hmm. And if you don't hear both versions, how can you really help them as a couple?
I have counseled couples where I did both. And what I usually do is the initial sessions, I do them separately because they're not going to be at liberty to talk when they're together. Mm-hmm. So I may do 1 or 2 or several separate sessions and then start doing them together so I can see both sides of the story. But I can work with just one side, like I said, because I just give that person whatever they need. I help them get to where they need to be in their place, and then they will, you know, make whatever changes. Or sometimes they don't have to leave the relationship. Sometimes they just need to see things from a different perspective, and the relationship will shift.
But don't you think you get better results if you could counsel them both? Because what I have seen over the years from people who I know go to counselors is I hear them telling their side of the situation, which isn't always not that it's a lie, it's their perception, it's not the fact. Right. And so in order, I feel, to help both people, it would be nice if the person who is advising one person knows the truth and then can help them both. What do you think about that? How do you handle that? Well,
the other partner is not always willing. And I think that a majority of the time, only one will come to me. The other one doesn't have anything to do with, you know, they don't have a problem. Everything's fine. The problem lays in the one who came to me. That's the most common that I see. Although I do have couples, like I say. But I think the most common is one person goes for help because they want to fix this and they don't know how to do it. The other partner doesn't want to cooperate or participate, and that's okay. I do with the one, and either it gets resolved or they have to part.
Over the years of being a counselor, what's the common thread that you hear from a lot of couples that you think a lot of people experience just because they just are locked into not hearing anything other than the way they feel? What's the one thing you hear constantly from couples?
The one I hear constantly from women is he doesn't listen to me. He doesn't hear me. He's not listening to me. And Also, they feel most of the time like they're doing the bulk of the work in the relationship, whether it be in the home or even in anything. I do all the work, I'm the one who's doing most of the work. So they feel, you know, overworked and frustrated and taken advantage of, and not appreciated. There's not an appreciation. Doesn't mean that the man does not appreciate her. It just means, like you say, that's her perception. Most things can be fixed with communication, but the other partner has to be willing to communicate. If they can get to a point where they can communicate and she can say, I'm feeling unappreciated. You don't appreciate me, or I feel you don't appreciate me because this, and that. Communication, that's not, people say communication is a key. It is a key. When it comes to couples, it's absolutely a key. If you don't say what's bothering you, if you don't tell him or her, you don't like that, you don't want to go there, you're unhappy about this, that, or the other, they don't know. They just know you're mad, right? You're not speaking to them, or you're giving them the cold shoulder, or maybe you're acting perfect, like everything is fine, and you're just simmering inside, which a lot of people do. Mm-hmm. They want to show that everything's perfect, right? Even to themselves. And so communication is the most important thing from both parties. Honest, authentic communication. It's not what we're taught in this society. It's very different.
Well, I would imagine you're super busy, because I'm hearing from a lot of people that I've interviewed and people that I communicate with during the day, that so many couples were like ships passing each other in the ocean because they were so busy with their careers. Mm-hmm. And now that so many of them are forced into lockdown together, they're discovering how much they don't really like each other, and how much they are not compatible. Is your phone ringing off the hook with these people?
Not quite yet, but I'm open to that. Not quite yet. Everybody has to be ready to say, I want to reach out. Men are not as fast to reach out as women because, they like to solve their own problems. But, the thing about the ships passing in the night is so true. They were never, or got away from having a deep relationship. Some people never have one. Everything is very surface, A
lot of them is just
weather, has the coffee, where the kids, they keep it at this surface level. Some couples never go deep, get married and never have gone deep in their relationship. Others have, and they've lost that because they've been so busy. The ones that initially have it can turn that around. The ones that never have it have to be able to discover each other and begin to go deep,
Yeah. Hats off to the ones that stay together for money. Money can never cut it for me. I need more for my relationship than that green note. And I know mm-hmm. some who stay together for money, and it just blows me away.
Yes.
How do you speak to the notion that love will overcome everything? Is it, by the way, is it a notion? I should start with that question.
I think it's real. I think that love will, because God is love, and love is it's the highest on the vibration scale is love and appreciation. So love can change everything. It can change your relationship with your sister, with your mother, with your husband, with your boyfriend, with your girlfriend, with your children. But we're talking about true, pure love, allowing that into your heart. Love, like we see in novels and we see on TV, that's a whole different thing.
I'm glad you prefaced it with TV and novels. The Cinderellas, the Sleeping Beauties.
Right.
I always jokingly say somebody's going to sue Disney before I die for that fallacy.
I believed it when I was a kid. I believed that your Prince Charming would show up and a big light would come and you would live happily ever after. And then when you think about it as an adult, she saw him once and she was in love, and he saw her once and they were in love, and they supposedly stayed together forever. They don't tell us.
Happily ever after.
Lived happily ever after. But They don't even know each other. How could they even love each other? It takes time to create, to feel love for a person. Not a baby. A baby, once it's born, and before it's born, boom, the love is there. But meeting a partner, it's not instant like that. It isn't.
You don't think there are cases of that? I can tell you that I met someone, and in that instant, I have loved that person until today.
Wow.
So it does happen. I'm not with them, but it
Okay.
does happen.
It does
and
happen.
when it happened to me, I was blown away because I didn't believe in it at all.
Wow. Well, that's good. I've
Yeah.
never had that happen. I'm glad to hear you, because I never heard anybody say that before to me.
Yeah. So you don't believe in love at first sight. I believe that some of us have pre-existing connections.
I do too. I do believe that.
Usually when you meet someone and you feel that, it's probably one of those types of situations.
Yes, it probably
That's
is.
just a guess because I have nothing to support that.
Mhm.
But it's your specialty, so you tell me. You tell me about love. What exactly is love?
That's a really complicated and big question, but for me, it is when you feel about this person, not only do you want to be with them, and this isn't just romantic, it could be, but that you want only the best for them.
Yes.
You care for them. They used to always say more than you care for yourself, but that's an imbalance. As much as you care for yourself, and you want them to thrive and to prosper,
Yes.
and you want them to be happy. And when they're happy, you're happy,
Yes.
but not at that expense of yourself, And so a lot of people think that their relationship has love in it, but it doesn't really, because one or the other partner is extremely selfish or self-focused, and we're all selfish. It's good to be selfish. It's not good to be selfless all the time. But when you take no concern for the other person, when you constantly take no concern for the other person, that's not love. That's just whatever, convenience, money, whatever reason, because it looks good to be with this person.
Thank you for that, because I think that it can be a misused term, or love has, maybe that's not correct. Maybe I should correct that and say that love means different things to different people.
Yes.
So I was just wondering, as a licensed professional in this field, what you thought it was. And I agree with your definition, because that's how I feel. Love is not necessarily being with that person, but just wanting to know they're safe and happy and enjoying the best of life.
Yes.
How many of your clients would you say on average that you see are in dysfunctional relationships because they're in love? And how do you deal with them?
All of them. All of them are in dysfunctional relationships, because if you're talking about romantic.
Yes.
When they're coming to me, it's because they're in dysfunctional relationships. And they are in love, or they believe they are in love. Many of them are obsessed. And there's a big difference between being in love with a guy or a woman and being obsessed with them. And I used to be obsessed, so that's how I know. And so being in love is different. It is more, you feel more grounded. You don't have all that crazy behavior.
Like stalking.
Like stalking, checking his phone all the time. All that kind of crazy stuff. Love feels more grounded, and you feel comfortable, and you feel good in the relationship. Whereas when you're obsessed with the person, and usually means because the person is really rejecting you. Otherwise you wouldn't feel that. Mm-hmm. And so it's a very dysfunctional relationship, because let's say she's in love, he does a lot of rejecting, goes out with his friends or whatever, just ignores her. And not that men don't do that. All men do that, all women do that, but not on a consistent basis. Mm-hmm. And so that feeds into her low self-esteem, because this guy isn't giving her what she wants. And so then she becomes obsessed with, okay, I'm going to make him love me the way I love him. And it could be reversed too, but I see more women than men. And so it just becomes a case of an obsession, not true love. Does that make sense to you?
Oh, yes. I know a situation like that. And I feel really bad for the woman, because as a woman, I feel sad that women allow themselves to go down that road. You know, I feel like self-respect comes first, always. And I don't feel someone who's stalking another person has any self-respect.
No,
Or
absolutely not.
self-esteem.
Right. But she's driven by that need to be loved by this person. So I don't judge her because she doesn't know. She's just following what she feels she needs to do to, to capture this relationship and live happily ever after, the dream.
Whenever I'm really enjoying a session, the time runs out. But I can't let you go unless I ask you, what didn't I ask you that you want to make sure you leave with the viewers?
I think in this time of COVID-19, I want to say that spread your love, not just with your partner, just not romantic, but really begin to spread your love, because we've come to a place where people are scared of each other. Mm-hmm. I go out and people turn from me, and that kind of it doesn't feel good. So open your heart and spread your love, because we all have so much love to give, because love can turn this whole world around.
I agree. I could not agree with you more. And last question, we'll make it quick because we're out of time. What have you learned about yourself during this crisis?
What have I learned about myself?
Mm-hmm.
I've learned that just because there's a crisis going on, it doesn't mean that I can't thrive. And that's another message for everyone else. Just because there's a crisis going on, it doesn't mean you cannot thrive, which means you can thrive through COVID-19.
Love it and love you, and thank you so much for sparing this time to spend with me, Marie. And thank you so much for watching Conversations with Jennylyn. When a conversation is all you need to be inspired, and we brought you a great session on relationships and love today, although that was not the intention. And I will see you next time.
Broadcasting from Silicon Valley, California, this is Conversations with Jennylyn.